thoughts, manifestation, feeling your feelings, psychic awareness, feminine awakening, interdependence, bringing the luxury back into spirituality, the deepest friendships you could ever want, conflict resolution, the healthy masculine, the divine feminine. Welcome to High Havingness. Enjoy your journey.
I'm here today with Nicole Rubin. She is she is an attachment-based somatic therapist. She's incredible. I cannot wait to talk about all the things that we have planned today. We're talking about neurodivergence. We're talking about codependency. We're talking about overperforming and overfunctioning. We're talking about weaponized therapeutic language. I've never been so excited in my entire life to have a conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. Well, because the world is moving towards more inclusion, more accessibility for people to understand themselves, I'm so curious about this word, neurodivergence. Like, what does that mean? Because we're seeing a lot of people who are classifying or identifying as being neurodivergent, and me being one of them, but also me not knowing truly what it means. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so, neurodivergence is ultimately an umbrella to explain different ways of thinking. And truthfully, like real talk, it would be really wonderful if we could sort of take away the pathology and just recognize that the world functions and has functioned for millennia because there are different types of brains. But as we sort of streamlined our reality and the way we exist in our society, at some point they decided what was the right way. And so neurodivergent literally refers to like the other ways of being. And so it's this giant umbrella that most often includes ADHD, autism, sensory dysfunctions, different ways of learning, like dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyslexia, those sorts of things. Lesser known types of neurodivergence would be things like bipolar disorder, developmental trauma, things that alter the way the brain functions. So how you show up as an adult changes.
Oh, yeah.
That was a lot. Just throwing it.
I want to add one. It's likely the umbrella that most people who are psychic or have these extrasensory abilities fall under. They probably have a
100%.
nice overlap.
Right.
Thank you so much for defining that.
No
I
problem.
just recently watched the movie Divergent.
Can I just say real quick, the fourth book of that is the only book that while I was reading it at a cafe, I got so angry because there's this terrible thing that happens. I literally threw the book.
Yeah.
I was like, screw this whole book. So,
I have given my time. I have given my dedication. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since I read the last book, but I feel like I know what you're talking about. I feel the sensation in my body.
It's hard to miss. Yeah.
But like breaking it down in that context of that movie, in a neurotypical society, right? Like everyone's structured and organized and has one linear focused purpose.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, you're like all of the things and you're different and you're unique. And that's really, really something that should be celebrated.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, oh, wow. I kind of love this. I love this.
Well, to me, it's the kind of thing where most people don't like have the conversations recognition that neurodivergence is an evolutionary adaptation. It's the next step in our evolution. So people will view it, especially if they were prescribed Ritalin as a child, as this real block, as this, massive character flaw to who they are, when actually it is like, nah, bro, it's the other direction. Like, this is a gift. It's just that our society wants us to be able to sit still for 8 hours. And, ADHD, I like to say, is more of a manifestation of the hunter response, whereas autism is more the gatherer response. And knowing
Mm.
that, being able to harness it, you know, if you're a hunter, no, you're not going to hold 10 pieces of information in your brain at once. But you are going to pivot really quickly. Like there's so many pluses that are designed to help you be a better hunter. Same with autism. And so I would love if that was more of a conversation of like, no, babe, this is a gift. This is a gift.
That is such a beautiful way to break it down. As somebody who has been clinically diagnosed with ADHD.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That hunter gatherer. I'm like in awe. I'm like, okay, that one's thinking. I feel seen.
We can come back to that later because once you figure that out, you can hack it.
Right. Exactly. It's like, okay. Yeah. I think as a child, like I had a really difficult time with traditional education. I was like, I don't want to sit in this. I'd get A's on the tests. I would read a book because, you know, a hyper focused read for me. I was like, I'm going to just like take all this information in and then I'll just somehow remember it. I don't know how in this moment, get an A. And my teachers would be like, you're getting a C in this class because of participation. I was like, I have no interest in participating. I'm bored.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's do something cool. I mean, now if they were
Yeah.
teaching me psychic development and like actual skills to survive on this planet, that would be a little bit different. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, yeah, I would definitely resonate with being neurodivergent for sure.
Me too.
Yeah, which is really cool and really empowering too, especially with the frame that you have. It's like, no, this is our next evolutionary step. Like we
Yeah.
are becoming more sensitive and more attuned and more connected, hopefully back with the earth. These are good things.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So let's talk about being an attachment-based somatic therapist. What is that
Yeah.
like, and how did you get into this work?
You know, the thing about being a therapist is you sort of start out as one type of therapist. You know, when you graduate, you have these ideas about, you know, who you're going to treat and what you're going to do. And then you get out there and, whoo, it is just, you know, most psychology programs, counseling programs don't actually cover trauma too much. Like you would think that that would be a big part of it, but most programs is not. And so when I graduated, I didn't have any trauma training. And I had a client that we had a wonderful relationship, and she had disclosed that something really traumatic had happened to her. And I was like, hey, babe, I don't know what to do with this. Like, this is not what I'm trained in. And she said, well, I'm not going to work with anybody else. So you better get trained in it. And I was like, all right, that's fair. And so it started a journey, and I started out looking at DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which is a really popular modality because it's very focused on what you're doing, right? It's behavioral in nature. But I kept hearing from different people like, oh, these skills don't work for me, or when I need them, I don't remember to use them. And it felt like it was missing a soul. And I think I was at a drum circle or a cacao ceremony or something, and somebody mentioned somatic therapy, and I was just like, what is that? And so I started my own search, and I visited a somatic experiencing professional, my therapist, Jenny, love me some Jenny, just to try it out, and fell in love with her because she's incredible, but also was like, holy shit, like this is real. And so how I will explain it to people is, you know, if you've ever seen a dog like going down the stairs and they kind of fall down the last couple stairs and they get up and they shake it off, that is how that dog is releasing the stress hormone. So if you see a dog in any situation walk away a few steps and shake it off, they are very clearly releasing stress hormone. And animals do that. We don't, because at some point, I think that the thinking is that it became like socially unacceptable to do that. And even now, my biggest gripe is that somehow people got taught that when they're anxious, what they should do is sit still and breathe. And then it becomes a panic attack and they're not sure how it
Yep,
happened.
exactly.
Well, your body thinks you're running from a bear, and your response to the bear was to sit down and breathe. So your body thinks, well, I guess I better accept death now, and goes into freeze. So, so I teach people how to physically, very, very practically release stress hormone from their body. So that's
Mm.
the somatic little part of it. And the attachment part of it is really the understanding that the relationships we had with our primary caregivers, how we were able to give and receive love, is, a direct relationship to how we do it as adults. And that we have these parts of us that get stuck in these moments in the past. And the comparison I like to use is, if you've ever been like laying on the couch and there's a part of you that really wants to like get up and go do something, but there's this other part of you that really wants to just stay on the couch all day, and you want them both equally. And you sort of go into this like free state of like, I don't know which one to do. So those are both parts of you that exist, within you, oftentimes an echo of trauma, but not necessarily always. And so understanding your parts, the parts of your personality, allows you to heal parts of you that didn't have their needs met and develop a really wonderful relationship of self-talk, because to connect them, our parts speak through sensation typically.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for like articulating all
No
of that
problem.
and just like, yeah, that's it.
A little bow, wrap it up.
just tie it up in a bow, but truly,
Yeah.
heart's work, somatic experiencing, being able to, I love what you said too about like it somehow not becoming socially acceptable.
Yeah.
The vision that I get is like that kind of like discipline, this discipline came in, and we can look at this level of discipline in a lot of different modalities, meditation, like slow and still, and there's really beautiful moments for that. And I think one of the biggest moments on my journey, when I was learning how to meditate and like be still and like being, understanding that people with trauma can have a trauma response in stillness. They don't feel safe in stillness,
yeah. 100%.
And so
yeah.
when you're coming into these spiritual places and they're like, just be still. I remember one of my teachers like, yeah, our teachers would like throw stuff at us to make sure we could maintain stillness. I was like, that sounds dramatic, but okay.
It does.
It's like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. I remember I had a practitioner who did embodiment work that I worked with for a while, and she had said, she was like, the feminine meditates in movement. And I said, so, for people who can't find that safety in stillness, walking and meditating is actually a very, very good intermediary. But I am so obsessed with somatic work and being a life learner and a practitioner of couldn't even tell you what I do. Of psychic shit. The body is really, 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 really important. Like so important, and our inner dialogue and like the way that we relate to ourselves, and attachment with our caregivers.
Right.
That mother and father wound. A fun journey.
Well, and the most interesting thing, both for my own personal journey and because, the vast majority of my clients come to me with developmental trauma, even if they don't know that. You know, I had a client just the other day I've been working with for 3 years who just suddenly went, "Oh my God, like I always thought my family was so happy, but my dad was like a secret alcoholic and my mom has anorexia and I just never noticed." I was like, "Yeah, that's sometimes how developmental trauma works. It just like sneaks in under the radar because it's normal. But the somatic element of that is that, co-regulation starts in utero. We are a part of our mother's nervous system. So the life that your mother had while you were in utero is super relevant to who you become once you're born. And even further than that, you know, what a baby does to soothe their nervous system, and it has that skin to skin contact, and feeling the parent's heartbeat and breath. So again, if mom is super stressed out, potentially through obviously like no fault of her own, right? Like the world is a scary place. Um, you have a child that learns that co-regulating is not safe, and then either goes into a deep freeze state or completely goes inward to try and regulate. And that shows up into adulthood in really interesting ways.
Oh, fuck. Oh, God.
Yeah, bro. Toxic independence. What's up? Where it comes from?
Jesus. Jesus God. Oh, God. I'm dying. I had a partner recently who would be like, do you want to co-regulate? And I'd be like, no.
I'm all
I'd be like,
upset, thanks.
I'm like, I actually have my own regulation strategies that I had to learn because co-regulation was actually not available to me as a child. I had to self-soothe, and we can talk about, lots of issues with that. But yeah, I was like, no, my nervous system is in it's a really nice ventral vagal right now. So like I personally don't want to help you.
Right.
It's
Right.
interesting. It can go like it's like if our caregiver can't be in that relaxed, just like available connective state, we're not really getting the co-regulation that we need.
Right. Right.
So I'm like,
You might be interested, Stan Tatkin.
I've been writing notes on this episode because I'm learning so much.
Stan Tatkin has some wonderful books that talk about like our wiring systems. But one of his, I think it's from a book called I think We Do, is all about like the four types, or involves the four types of regulation. And don't quote me on it because now it's been a minute, but it was like, when you only want to regulate you, when you want the union to regulate you, so there's different ways that we do that. And I'll say, if your former partner happened to be raised as a man, that men are not women aren't especially taught how to self-regulate. Men are even more so taught to go into a big shutdown response. Not only that, they get socialized to believe that their partner is the only person that they're allowed to co-regulate with. And so it becomes this either overt or covert demand on their female partner to regulate their bodies.
Will I be crying on this podcast?
You can. Tears are a great cortisol release.
I agree. And I am so open to crying because like the feeling of being seen. But yeah, that demand on my nervous system or my grounding has been so exhausting.
Right.
Because I'm like, I guess, and there might be some feelings here around feeling angry and a little resentful that I have to do all this work for myself and then pull the masculine through it too. I'm not doing it anymore. I just like, I had to learn all these tools and techniques for myself and learn amazing regulation strategies. And, there's got to be a level of reciprocity in relationship where it's like the person that you're with also can be in ventral vagal, also can be in this calm and open and loving and like oriented state. And I find that really challenging when it comes to dating, is finding someone who's actually regulated.
Yeah. I mean, when I work with men, it's really interesting because oftentimes dating will come up, and before I really encourage them to date, the idea of the masculine and feminine that we so often talk about. Well, for a woman to be comfortable in more of a receivership place, there has to be a felt sense of safety and containment. And before a man can ever offer that to anybody else, he has to know how to be safe for himself. And I mean, look, of the 50 or so clients that I have, like five of them are men. And not because I don't love working with men, I do. It's that lots of guys don't go to therapy until their partners threaten to leave. Like they
Oh,
don't go on their own. They don't learn those skills, and kind of unless they have to, in my experience. And I think that the men are having their own awakening. It's just going slower, and it's sort of a little bit of a chokehold from people who keep divorcing them.
true, true. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that, looking at the energy and coaching clients who are leaving relationships because they're becoming more conscious to their needs
Yeah.
and what they want, and they're speaking their truth and they're
Yeah.
saying no more.
Amen.
I'm watching this happen over most of my clients.
Same.
And I'm like,
Same.
oh shit. Like the men are going through it. So, I see that. I mean, that must be hard. I was talking
Yeah.
with one of my sisters last night at dinner, and I was like, this energy, that, living in this patriarchal structure that women have been oppressed, women had no choice but to turn inward and work on
Mhm.
themselves. They had no
Right.
choice. And
Right.
so this work has been our emotional labor for a very, very long time. And
Hmm.
so from the context of that masculine energy of maybe not having that oppressive energy to
Mm.
relate to, I see that like women are like, yeah, like this isn't it. We've been doing this
Right.
labor for a really, really long time, and we'd like you to
Yeah.
jump on board. And sometimes it takes, at least I'll talk about in my context, a certain amount of trauma or oppression to kind of break through and to realize, okay, like I've got to work on myself.
Yeah. Well, people don't typically change when they're comfortable. Very rarely does someone come to therapy and they're like, oh, I was just thinking I'd like to think about myself some. No, like usually it's in the midst of a dark night of the soul, some type of real interpersonal or intrapersonal chaos. You got to be backed up into a corner sometimes to decide it's worth the risk, because most people assume that the stuff they've got locked inside is a vase, and if you open the door, the vase is going to come crashing to the ground, and that'll be the end of their identity. I don't know, you know
Mm, the ego
but
grip.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I personally will take a stand on this that I actually love my ego, because I really, really resonate with parts work. And I think that
Yeah.
our ego is that like gatekeeper. Like it's like this
Mm,
energy of like, okay, this identity keeps us safe. It's this like recorder. It's like, okay, this is the human experience. Okay, if I attach to this feels good. Let's go there. It's the director.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
a lot of spiritual dogma is like kill the fucking ego. Actually, no, if you kill the fucking ego, you're gonna die. Because the ego
yeah,
is what's keeping you safe. And for me, the ego always goes hand in hand with the nervous system.
sure.
They're buddies. My ego's personal name is Sarah. And so
Oh,
instead of
hi,
being
Sarah.
like, hey, Sarah, like you're being a bitch, I'm like, Sarah, oh my God, you're so sweet. Like, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I actually got it. You can sit next to me if you'd like, and
Right.
we could share some tea and we could vibe out to Taylor Swift, whatever you want. But I'm driving. Like
Yeah.
you're not here. So I'm really, really tired of the idea that we're here to kill the ego. And I've experienced ego death. I would just call that like identity shifting, like really like the breakdown of programming.
Yeah.
And coming into a new form, and this kind of death and rebirth cycle that, you know, as someone who resonates with being psychic kind of goes on. And yeah, the less attached we are to killing a part of ourselves. Do you think, like, when I hear that out loud, I'm like, we're gonna kill ourselves?
Yeah.
Why don't we accept and integrate? Like, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, how I usually explain parts work to people, and I think it kind of speaks to what you're talking about. And I did not make this up. I heard this a while back and I just thought it was a freaking brilliant metaphor. So I almost steal it, but it's an IFS metaphor, is that our higher self, that self energy, our little spark of the divine, is like a school bus driver. And so to begin with, for us to have access to our school bus driver, for it to be a good school bus driver, they have to, you know, have slept the night before. They can't be showing up to drive the kids drunk. They can't be trying to buy stuff on Amazon while the kids are being rowdy in the back. So there's a level of presence that requires nervous system regulation to start with. And then when we're talking about ego, well, let's look at our kids in the back. It's made up of all of our little aspects of our personalities. Some parts are parts that we don't talk to regularly because bad things happen to them. And if we were too close to that all the time, we wouldn't be able to function. And so, you know, when you've got these little exiled, wounded parts, you oftentimes have other kids who are trying to protect them. So I would call Sarah a manager. And
she's a queen.
Right. And like, for the school bus analogy, Sarah has probably got one hand on this little wounded part, but she's sitting right behind the school bus driver. And she's the one that's like, hey, I don't think you're taking the right route. If you make a right up here instead of a left, I think we could really save some time. So she's not trying to be a jerk. And, you know, the same thing with kids. You wouldn't expect a school bus driver to name call. You wouldn't expect them to like kick Sarah off the bus. Sarah is trying to protect her buddy. You're meeting her because Buddy is she's real quiet. She's real sweet. She needs to be protected. She needs to be healed. When she gets healed, Sarah can then have a new job.
Oh, which is identity shift.
Yeah.
I love this idea of the bus, because when I started doing psychic readings and coaching, I'd never learned about parts work. Like, I'd never been trained in it. And this idea came in one session. I was like, we just need to like separate you. So let's like think of a vehicle. And I was like doing parts work without doing parts work. And then when I learned about parts work, I was like, I have been doing this the whole time. Okay. But yes, I love that. You wouldn't be mean to a little child who's trying to protect a part of you, a really vulnerable part of you that is afraid.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like little sweets. And then, you know, Sarah, she's doing her best. She gets up with her crew perfectionism.
Yeah, naturally.
Inner critic hangs out too. Love her. Yeah. Like, they all hang out in the squad and they're doing their best. They're doing their best. And I, as the higher self, I do a lot of higher self activation work and connecting people with that higher aspect through meditative hypnosis. And this higher self, so interesting, because when we're in hypnosis, we're connecting. The higher self is so neutral. It's incredible. The higher self is not that voice in your head that's being sassy with you, or like, to me, there's also like very different parts too on the spiritual plane of like a guide or like other energy. There's so much. So it's like parts work on the physical for like the somatic experience, and also parts work on the astral, like, or the spiritual plane. So the higher self to me is very, very neutral. They're driving the bus, they're chilling. They've got the calm music. They're not affected by, like, if they can maintain that level of secureness and like chillness. It doesn't have to be chill. I mean, they don't have to be super chill, but like they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
The kids aren't going to be as, they're not going to be flailing in the back, like stressed out.
Yeah.
Oh God, I love the bus analogy. It really, really brings it into context too of like our internal landscape and how many too, like depending on who you are, like you could have 30 kids on your bus.
Most of us do.
Yeah,
Most
like
of us
there's
do.
30 children you're responsible for.
Yeah. And the piece of that is that like what stands to reason then is that you probably have parts that are in cahoots and you definitely have parts that don't like each other.
Oh, so deeply. It's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible to acknowledge that. And that's like that feeling of like, should I or should I not? And they're kind of like in a fight with each other. They're like, we want this, but you can't have it. It's not, it's so there's that like,
Right.
and this is what I'm glad we're getting here comes into most of my clients kind of struggle with this inability to make decisions.
Oh,
Our inability to own what feels good for us, our fuck
yeah.
yes, and to feel safe enough to say no. And I love this idea too, that there's sometimes different parts of us internally, like not on the same page. And it's our
Right.
job to mediate those parts. Truly, like we are our own mediator, and having that level of self-awareness is amazing. What would you say? So like, I wrote down like what, I don't know where I wrote it down, but
Somewhere.
why do you think, this is the biggest question I could ever ask you. That's why I'm laughing. I'm like, so why do you think women struggle with saying no?
For the next 8 weeks, I will be discussing.
Please unpack that for us.
There are several things at play here. Obviously. Okay. Like which thing to break it down. So I think that looking at the societal context for that is probably the most important place to start because evolutionarily, we are programmed that fitting in with our people is a life or death issue, right? If you go back 500 years, if you were a woman scorned, if you were cast out, it was immediately a life or death threat if you were not taken in by someone. 500 years ago is just not that long when we're talking about our body's response. So, bare minimum, we are looking at, a whole societal idea of what it means to be safe and belonging. And we just got rights, we just got them. But also trauma is passed down through the sperm and through the egg in our T cells. Interesting little tidbit. Our T cells are the site for inflammation. So if you are a chronically inflamed person, I might encourage you to look at ancestral trauma and how it might be living in your body.
Mic drop.
I know, right?
Should I take notes? I'm like,
I believe this is being recorded. You could go back and watch it.
Thank God.
So, we're not just talking about your difficulty saying no. Let's look at how your great great grandmother may not have been able to say no. Like I'm Jewish, and if you look at the Jewish experience, we have existed because we have assimilated. We have fawned. We have gone to different societies and said, who do you need us to be? We will become that. Right? I remember being raised in the South, and I was literally told, you might be the first Jewish person somebody ever meets. So you need to be a model Jew, and that oftentimes meant not saying no. By the same token, my whole community is deeply, deeply codependent. And that is a survival response. You can look at many communities that have used codependency, i.e., not saying no, not having boundaries, as a way to literally survive. And so we're in
Mm,
a different system, but ultimately our system is super freaking new, you
yeah.
know? So if we're talking about saying no, then I think, if we're talking about ultimately boundaries, then I would like to talk about boundaries as the fawn response.
Let's do it.
Yes, because ultimately, the idea of fawn, I always compare it to like those little fish that clean sharks' teeth and like the sharks don't eat them because they're cleaning the teeth,
Hmm.
right? Um, if I keep you happy, then I'm more likely to be safe. And that is straight up biological. And especially if you came from a home, where what your parents wanted was the most important thing, then you may have decades of let me deny what I need, let me self betray to make sure that I'm safe. Because if my parents are unhappy, I am unsafe. And little girls are just expected to do that more than little boys. Help mommy set the table, like there's just so many different examples of that. So that's a real layered question.
I know that was incredible. That was an incredible answer and a really, really, really good place to start. Is that ancestral conditioning,
Yeah.
the genetic coding, and really starting to unpack that. Like,
Yeah.
I am an Italian American, and most women are subservient to men who are doing nothing. It's horrifying. So when that shows up in my life, I'm like, nope, that's the ancestral route. I hear you. And so energetically, when I look at someone's aura and they're having a difficult time making a decision, we look at, are your ancestors in your aura?
Oh, that's so interesting.
And we move them out. So I'll
Okay.
have a client who's like really lit up energetically.
Mm.
And okay, well, I'll give an example. She was like, I can't make money. I can't make money. There's this narrative in my head of I have to be impoverished and poor. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what
Mm.
kept your ancestors safe.
Yeah.
Having money to them was actually kind of life or death, because if they came up, that would bring them into attack. That would bring them into having more to respond to. So I told her, I was like, honey, these are ancestral stories.
Mm.
And I hear you. This is really, really difficult. And this is probably something you're going to be working on in this lifetime. It's not a one psychic reading experience, not one coaching or one therapy kind of session, as it's so ingrained. But, making that separation, that like when those stories come up, we just make this nice little gentle, like, hello to the ancestors, hello to
Mm.
my Italian grandparent, like Italian line, who is like, serve the men. And I talked about this recently on the podcast episode that will probably come before this, but this narrative of like, I don't have resentment. It's how they survived.
Right.
They didn't have rights. Like, in order to have any level of comfort, they had to maintain attractiveness
Mm-hmm.
and reproduce and fawn.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
no voice. And so we're coming out of that, especially this generation. I'm so proud of us.
Yeah.
But it's not easy work, because you're fighting against like a shitstorm of past energy.
Sure.
I would like to say this is wrong and invalidate you.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I don't know, if you're on this journey and listening to this podcast, I see you. It's not easy work to own your no, especially for me, to a man, because of my programming.
Mm.
I'm
Right.
like, a no to a man could potentially
Mm-hmm.
mean you are cut off, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
resources, blah, blah, blah. And
Right.
what I do is I teach people how to clear that karma.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating
Mm.
spiritual journey. And also
Yeah.
there's two things. You can do that spiritual, but if you don't clear it from the body,
Hmm.
They
Right.
have to live together.
Hmm.
You can't bypass like they have to live together. They're cohesive. We've got the spiritual
Right.
body, we got the mental body, we got the physical body, we have the emotional body. They're all dancing together. That's why like this holistic approach is so important to me in my own healing. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing your
Of course.
experience of fawn, being Jewish.
Yeah. Well, and for what it's worth, like I think, the tenets of white supremacy are homogenous and like rob us of our individual cultures. So like I am Jewish, uh I would say before I am white, because I am only white for as long as you like Jewish people. As soon as you don't like Jewish people, I become not white anymore. But I do have the benefit of looking at, and so do you.
Yes.
And I think that it would be really remiss to not also have a deep understanding that white women have been the enforcers of white supremacy for many, 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 many years. And that role comes with, you are supposed to get it right. You are supposed to be kind and accommodating. You are supposed to follow the rules. You are supposed to be helpful. There's some real rigid training that exists at almost every level of our society. Um, and I think that the fawn response there is just it's huge. It exists
Mhm.
in how we shop for things. If it's something is being advertised, it's probably going to be advertised sexily, and that's relevant.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that's not sexy.
Yeah. 100%. I know that. I've definitely had my privileges being a white woman.
Right.
Totally, 100%, and owning the harm that has been
Mm.
caused by that and been caused
Sure.
by like my conditioning there is
Sure.
something that I am I definitely am working through and owning, because it's not something that's like an easy little chunk of
Yeah.
information to look at. It's like, oh shit, I'm a part of this. And I
Yeah.
would like
Yeah.
to dismantle this oppression, but it starts by
Right.
like, looking at the programs that I'm running internally
Right.
that uphold it
Right. Well,
and
and fawn
harm
is just so
people.
in
Ugh,
that.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's its own journey. And
Yeah.
so that reclamation of liberation for ourselves also comes with
Hmm.
looking at the way that we have oppressed other people.
Right. Well, and it's really interesting. One of my good friends, Desiree Stevens, she runs a group called Making Shift Happen, and she talks about intersectionality in just the most incredible way. I have so much appreciation for her as an educator. But I remember last year sometime she got really angry with me because I had posted something on Facebook and somebody had responded with one of those kind of politely offhand comments that were like passively violent, but it was polite violence. And I engaged with her on the same polite level. And Desiree was like, hey, that's not it. And what I realized is I was ultimately fawning with this person on Facebook that I don't give a shit about because, I didn't want to ruffle feathers. Well, hey, baby, if you're going to claim to be an ally, like you don't be afraid to ruffle some feathers. But that inner fawn within me was like, oh no, I don't want anybody to be mad at me. And it
Mm-hmm.
guided my behavior in a really unhealthy place. So it's so interesting that just it shows up in so many different places in our everyday life.
Yeah, I'm literally fawning right now, even talking about it. I'm like,
You're like, oh
just
no.
to explain, I'm like, I'm closeted this because I'm so afraid of like talking
Yeah.
about this
Right.
or not being educated enough or sharing enough. And I think that no, like, we got to start. So it's like I'm
Yeah.
noticing this like restriction in my chest, and I'm like, okay, I hear you.
Mm,
There's a protective part of me here trying to shut my
mm,
heart down, and like what I want, because I'm so afraid of being
yeah.
seen as intolerant or this
Uh-huh.
or that or being persecuted. And I'm like, No. I just give myself permission to be a kindergartner, fuck it up, come back to it, receive feedback. But the conversations need to be had. And I think that that's really important. So if you hear my shallow breathing right now, it's because there's a very protective part of me saying, don't fucking martyr yourself. Like, it's like this part of me every single time I have a conversation about this. And I want you guys to know that this is something that's so important to me. Something I just like have been dying to talk about, because it's like, I want to make this easy for the nervous system to receive, because it is such a big topic.
Yeah.
But also I want to name that I still have this fawn, like this protective energy coming at me saying, do not talk about this, which is probably that program of like, you need to appease the white people.
Right. Or what if I don't do it right? What if there's a person of color that's listening and I'm saying something offensive? Like, but ultimately your early question of sort of like, well, what makes it hard for people to say no? The feeling in your chest right now,
here,
right?
I like this feeling, and I'll explain it as, I so desire to be likable and have connection. It's this protective program. I've been working on this. And so naming it, like for me, like this has taken a lot of growth to just be able to name this sensation in my body, this shutting down. I look at it as like there's a black balloon over my heart stretching me like in. And I'm like, okay, I hear you, I see you. And also, I'm sitting in my bedroom in my home. I'm a good person. I love myself. I give myself grace to make mistakes, and it's safe to talk about the things that I'm learning.
Yeah. So one step further, the closest exit point from your chest is your hands. Ooh. So, right. And if it's in your chest, then we can also use a vocalization to move. So would you try a thing with me?
Of course. I've never been so excited in my life.
So all we're going to do is we're going to make a voo sound. So just voo. Yeah. But while we do it, we're going to sort of slowly open and close our hands. This is going to mimic like what you would do if you were like scratching. And as you're doing it, you can push your hands out and in. And then we're going to turn our voo into a growl. Yes. Okay. So we'll do it like 3 times if that's okay. And I think that we'll both move it because I feel it too, baby.
Do you feel it?
Oh, of course I do.
There's a part of me that's just so fucking excited. I'm like gonna cry.
Beautiful. It's a great cortisol release. Okay, so nice deep inhale. Nice deep inhale. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm sweating.
Let's do one more, however feels right.
Oh my God.
Shake it out a little bit, move things around.
Oh my. The trauma release.
Yeah, sweating, tingles, crying, shaking, all that's really normal ways for the body to just get rid of that stress hormone.
Just gonna take a pause for a moment here.
Yeah.
That was incredible. Ooh.
I have done that at the airport before.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I really felt that connection too in the hands and the chest. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so much energy is moving through my body, like here on that right side, that masculine grip.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Incredible. I
You
mean,
know,
everyone listening just got a treat. I hope you growled with us.
I hope so too. That'd be so good.
Yeah.
Growl through time.
I'm gonna start growling and
Yeah.
no, why not?
You know, to be real with you, the single biggest thing that I work on with people is developing two practices, a pleasure practice and a rage practice, because you know, our window of tolerance, it's real tight for a lot of people, and women are not often allowed to experience rage. There's not safe places for them. I grew up in a household where it wasn't okay to be anything but like happy, and not
Oh,
because I didn't grow up in a loving place, but like that was the expectation, is that things were okay. And so it was so liberating to me once I started embracing my rage, anger as a compass, you know?
mhm.
And I think growling is a really wonderful way to embody the permission to feel your anger, to understand your compass.
I could just listen to you talk for like hours. I'm
Thanks, Sue.
loving that this is moving too, because I feel like I'm gonna burp. So this is really great.
We
She's
love burps, we
moving.
love
We
farts.
love
Both are
burps,
good.
farts, yawns, all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like our rage has been so internalized as women because we've been taught to be happy. We've been
Or
taught to
else.
be in codependency with everyone around us.
Right.
And when we're not, there is that fear of I will be abandoned, I will be ostracized, I will be hurt for speaking my truth. And so that's really, really real. And we have to like give ourselves permission to know that that's there.
Yeah.
So if you're like, I can't make a breakthrough, it's like, it's okay. You're just working through really, really intense programming and it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, anger is our sign of like our boundaries have been crossed. There is something in you that is like protective and it's ready to go. And then
Hmm.
coming into completion with that anger is so important. And teaching women how to do that is my life's work on this planet. How can we
Amen.
be angry? How can we own that primal energy? How can we be wild and uninhibited in ways like really women's reclamation work?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
huge. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm growling more. That's it. Like I'm so excited to own that. And for anyone listening as well, like there might be shame stories or stories that come up of like, I can't use my voice. Like, no,
Mm.
those are not your energies. They're not. But like
Yeah.
that, like I remember feeling shame when using my voice or growling, like, oh, I'm gonna look stupid, or like whatever these like weird voices
Mhm.
are. Those are just protections. It's okay. You're likely in the comfort of your home to try it. And like it's always fun to create new neural pathways and try something new. If you can
Yeah.
maintain curiosity, oh my gosh, if this world was curious,
Oh,
like
curious, not judgmental. Thank you, Ted
yeah,
Lasso.
literally curiosity is like the cure to life. It's like, can I be
Yeah.
curious? Can I be curious? Okay. And leading into that. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Of
While
course.
while my body's processing that, I have another big question for you.
Sure.
I'm
Hit
like,
me.
I have so many questions for you. Um, so one of the ways in which I was connected to you was through a fellow friend and therapist, Casey Paglarulo. I think I did it,
Yes.
Casey. So we did the last name, proud of myself.
Yes.
And she was like, we were talking about trauma information and this kind of really big there's a shift in the coaching industry right now because we have a
Mm.
lot of coaches coming up and treating trauma without having the actual information. And it can perpetuate trauma.
Oh, yes, it can.
And we're not doing that. We want
Yeah.
to own what we have the capacity to lead through.
Right.
And
Right.
there's a really beautiful blend of having information and tools and mentorship and all that, as well as owning your intuition. We want to blend the two. We don't want to like ostracize apart, because I think that, you know, women are really coming into that intuitive knowing, and they're like wisdom that lives inside of their bodies. And also
Yeah.
we want to make sure we have the information to be as ethical as possible when
Right.
connecting with women who have pain. And
Right.
so my question is,
Mhm.
because Casey was like, this is how I got connected to you. She's like, Nicole is the queen of trauma information. So like, you need to ask her, what does being in trauma, like being trauma informed mean?
Oh, wow. What a great it's a great question. You know, let me just say for the record, you know, that I have met some really wonderful coaches out there. I have met some coaches that made me feel real homicidal. You know, there's a huge uh, spectrum, and I feel like it would be culturally incompetent to not mention the fact that um, while I have a massive amount of student loan debt, I was able to get the loans that allowed me to go to school.
Yeah.
And so it is absolutely a privilege to have the education that I have. And it does not make me wiser, because let's be honest, a lot of Western psychology is borrowed shamanism, is indigenous wisdom that has been taken. I mean, if it works, it's probably really old. Doesn't work. It's oftentimes really new,
Mhm.
the, West African tribes and twerking. Well, twerking is a very somatic, release practice, right? So just to name that, I'm not inherently, of course, anti-coaching, and that being a quote unquote educated professional is a real small subset that I'm lucky to be in. Um,
Thank you for that.
so yeah, I just want to let me name that.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
you know, to be trauma informed means maybe that you have gone through it yourself, but I will say that sometimes I think a misstep that is made is the belief that because it looked like a particular thing for you, that explains trauma. And trauma is a really wild animal. It's got a lot of parts. We don't even fully understand it. At the end of the day, I practice somatically based in polyvagal theory, and that is a theory. We don't know, you know,
Yeah.
so much about it we don't know. So I think to be trauma informed means doing an incredible amount of education on how trauma lives in the body, but also the ways that your mindset shifts and changes as a result of trauma, and learning how the self talk shifts. I think it means you're sort of on a never ending journey of education.
Mm.
Never pretending to know, like, someone's body better than they do,
Oh, ho, 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 ho.
right? Because my conceptualization of what your trauma looks like may be radically different than yours. And it is not my job to convince you that mine is the right way to view it. It's my job to understand how you conceptualize it, how it lives within you, and meet you exactly where you are. And if I don't have that skill set, then I don't need to be working with people with trauma.
Ooh. Okay.
as a starting off point.
That's it. I mean, that was
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, like that. First of all, just the accessibility of being able to pursue education is such a privilege, honoring that. And thank you for naming that. And also,
Yeah.
I don't even know. I'm like blacking out because I'm like, that was great. I don't think I need to
There's
add
too
anything.
much stuff.
That's like, okay. I'm like, just gonna let's say hello to my space.
Yeah, right, coming back into orientation.
Just oriented. Yep. hmm
I love that for you.
the sky is so gray over there and so blue over there. It's so interesting. That was really, really, really well spoken. I can't wait to go back and listen to that because it just hit me in such resonance that I think I was like, okay, okay.
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing to know, so
Yeah.
much of our industry changes so consistently that, if you're a nerd, if you're a person that loves to learn, then being trauma informed is really exciting because there's always something new that's coming out that's changing it, that makes it more dynamic, more interesting, more rich, but you're not going to learn, just EMDR. You're not going to learn just NARM. You're not going to learn just DBT and be able to really meet people where they are because people are so dynamic.
So dynamic. And I think that it's so important to know our own limitations as well and
Mm,
to honor those and to
mhm.
name those. So I think that that's something that is challenging in the coaching industry because I think, there are of course issues with the psychological industry.
Yeah,
I can name all of those. That would also be about a year conversation. And there's also some
right.
really great things. Nothing is really black and white. It's not. But with the coaching industry, I'm a coach. So speaking from my perspective as somebody who
Yeah,
has a bachelor's degree in psychology, but just hasn't quite stepped in or found a master's program that fits. And also there is a really, really huge gap there on the financials to it and
yeah.
return on investment. I see a lot of coaches or a lot of psychotherapists transitioning into coaching
Mhm.
um, just because of certain regulations and things. And I love what you said too. It's like you're learning the person
Yeah,
and how they work, not from a lens of your experience, but you're really learning what works best for them, their body, their experience. And that's really, really important. Um, and also being able to own our capacity to being like, okay, like this is where, with that client that you had, like, I have trauma. You're like, well, I actually don't have the training for that. So I can recommend you. They're like, nope, you're gonna have to go get it.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
it's true. It's like it's owning that we do have in some ways limitations, and that can also be systemic as well. Like
Yeah.
the limitations of like education and finances and accessibility, things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's really important to follow your intuition and hopefully find a coach or a therapist that allows you to lead with your
Yeah.
body, like really, really lead and
Mhm.
have that agency. I've worked with
Mhm.
coaches that have created trauma for me.
Yep.
I worked with therapists and I've worked with therapists that are amazing. So it's really like
Yeah.
this weird dating process.
Oh, yes. I so compare it to that.
It's dating. It's like, okay, are
Yeah.
we a match? Like, do we have this connection? Because
Mhm.
especially I'm sure as an attachment based therapist too, it's like we want to create healthy attachment. Is this possible in this container? Is this safe in this container?
Right.
Um, and really for me, like safety looks like being able to speak your truth to the person that is your
Yeah.
practitioner, whatever that is. And
Yeah.
feeling safe enough to do that, that's a big sign for me. Can I say something as a recovering people pleaser, as a recovering codependent? Can I say something to
Yeah.
this person that might upset them? Because that would be the space where you would actually heal that.
100%.
That's what safety is.
Mhm.
It's can I be my full self here?
Right.
So
Right.
important when it comes to creating these spaces for people. It's like realizing that, yeah, it's not just our lens. Mm,
Mhm. Well, and kind of going back to earlier in our conversation, in the same way that in a romantic relationship, you might expect or hopefully expect your partner to be a container for themselves and do their own work so that they can show up in relationship with you, either a therapist or a coach, I want to know that they're doing their own work. Are they in supervision? Are they in their own therapy? I think one potentially dangerous place is just that, you know, sometimes I've heard a narrative sometimes for some coaches that, oh, I don't have to have all my shit figured out. I just have to be like 2 steps ahead of my client. And I think in the same way that when I was learning to drive and I was looking right in front of my car, and so I was swerving a lot, we need a little bit of distance from our shit before we can be a container for other people. So I want to know that the person that I'm working with has their stuff not necessarily figured out, but like, I don't want us to be walking through the same life season together, you know?
I agree.
Like that, we're friends. We're friends. If that's the case, we're friends, but I'm not going to pay you. You know?
Exactly.
So there's boundaries there.
Boundaries and just owning that. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because like from a psychic perspective as well, we call it matches. And I think in the therapy world it'd be called countertransference. But
Yeah.
so we've got matches with people, and honestly, we normally do, because I think that I have a belief that, spirit brings us what needs to be healed and we can work that out.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, if you are coaching someone and you're holding a safe container, I would say there is like an ethical, actually I don't even need to bring ethics in it. It's a grounding. Like you've grounded yourself and embodied this.
Right.
And that's really what I talk to myself. I'm like, is this embodied or is there still charge on this for me?
Yeah.
I'm working through codependency, and I have a feeling that's going to be part of my practice in about a year or so. But I am in the trenches with it. So I'm not like, let's have all my clients in container heal codependency, and like they're on their journey and I'm supporting them through, what they're growing through right now.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to read one codependency book and be an expert on codependency.
Right.
It's like, just like you wouldn't go to a session with me and immediately become a trained clairvoyant, like you, or you wouldn't go to a session with an EMDR therapist and become an EMDR therapist. Just because there's certain protocols, like, and that's okay.
Right.
And I'd love for the world to be more like open and accessible and sharing these modalities, because they're really healing. And I'm here for that. And that's why I created this podcast. It's like, let's like share information and make it and like to a place like you just shared an amazing tool that I didn't know. And I'm so excited to use that.
Great.
I love somatic work. I really do. And that will likely be part of my practice, maybe. And there's little tools I use with my clients, of course, but I'm growing into it.
Yeah.
And there is also a level too of this imposter syndrome that comes up for coaches too, because we've been taught that we need validation from like an external source, an institution, a certification. So I want to name that as well, because it's like, okay, there's a part of me that doesn't feel like I'll ever be the expert at anything. And I like that part of me because it creates curiosity, and I love being a lifelong student.
Yeah, same.
I've never been so humbled on my spiritual awakening journey when I think that I know something, and the universe is like, here's a mirror for that for you, because you don't know shit. And like, I want to know if you can embody it. I want to know if you can take action with it in your life. I want to know if you can use the tools, and you give yourself enough permission to slow down and do that.
Yeah.
So key. I mean, for me, I didn't just
funny you're saying that.
I didn't just learn how to like do energy work. It's been a process of like 4 years of intensive study and fucking up and doing all this and making mistakes, and like, my readings that happened before when I first came out and was like, are laughable. I mean, they helped people in some way, but they're laughable because now I'm like,
Yeah.
ethical and contained and grounded and neutral. And I'm like, oh shit.
Right.
I surprise myself sometimes.
Yeah, there's a great analogy that I like. Some people find it a little crude, but say la vie, is like it's a toilet bowl. Like we return to the same issues at a deeper level, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Codependency for me was the very first thing that I started on in therapy. Like I was, I think 19 years old, and my first therapist was like, oh, codependency. Okay, so we're going to talk about codependency for the next 3 years. And I thought I had that licked. And then I came out in 2022, started dating a woman for the first time. And boy, howdy, did I realize how deeply codependent, like heteronormative relationships are. Like I thought me managing our schedule and all of our relationships, like that worked for the relationship. He liked it. I was fine with it. And then now I'm dating a woman who's like, what are you doing? Calling me on my
Um,
shit. And I'm like, oh, you don't want me to manage our entire relationship? Okay, cool. I'm gonna need to make an appointment with Jenny.
oh my God, my dopamine hits from managing this and my self-worth that I get, that's all enwrapped in this.
Yes.
When you meet someone who is also independent and has done their work and you get in a
Right.
relationship, it's almost like a reset of like, ah, yeah. I mean, as being bisexual myself, the
Mhm.
difference between, and I don't actually have a lot of experience, just to name this, I've had one relationship with a woman. It was incredible. It was also traumatic.
It'd be like that sometimes.
It'd be like that. It'd be like that on the journey out.
Yeah. Yep.
But also, yeah, just my relationship with men. Yep. And noticing the shifts in my own body and relating to men and
Mm.
the programs that run, because they're so much deeper. I don't have as many programs with women. There are some though. There are some
Mm.
got like that deep sister wounding and whatever else. But
Mm.
it's just fascinating being bisexual and I'm like, I gotta go back to women. I really do.
They're great.
I
Can't
really,
recommend it enough.
you're
10
like
out of 10.
10 out of 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I agree. And I also love men and I honor you guys. I do. I do. I'm trying not to, I'm biased. I'm so sorry. I gotta like say it for what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. They just need a little help. They're just like 20 or 30 years behind us because we started getting the you go girl feminism in the 90s. And so
Yeah.
we've been going hard in our lifetime for the vast majority of our lives that we need to be developing and getting better and owning, and men just didn't get that. So they're going to get there. I think that they're going to get there. It's just going to take them a
Oh,
little longer.
I'm excited for you guys. And I hope that you can find some really nice masculine leaders. It'll be fun because again,
Oh,
not my responsibility. I'm working on in my own work that over responsibility, that codependency,
Mhm.
and being able to put it down. And something that I love is like thinking about things like scales and their balancing and swinging from like,
Mm.
codependency. When you start to realize you've got these codependent tendencies, and you're like, oh wow, I find a lot of self-worth in helping people. And I also like to call this like the martyr or the healer complex, because most humans I work with are natural born healers, but they've been programmed to take all of their healing energy and extend that out.
Yeah, man.
And I teach them how to energetically call that back in. And it actually is
Mm.
uncomfy for them, because when you go through this deprogramming and you learn that your healing energy is for you and your body, like there's no actual
Yeah.
other person it's for, it's actually to run in your body and to
Right.
use as your creative force. Healing energy is sexual energy, is creative energy, and that we're
Mhm.
all trying to self-resource our own energy and have that ability. And if we were all self-resourced interdependent people, oh my God, my dreams for the world. But yeah, there's a growth that happens for most of my clients, for myself too, when I went through this, is feeling this immense guilt and learning how to say no. I remember I had a partner and he's like, can I have a massage? I'd be like, no. You swing into, then these parts of you come out. We learned this in nonviolent communication. It's, I can't remember what he calls it, but there's just kind of like the fuck you phase. It's like, I'll never do anything again. You swing into this into independence. And that's my sweet spot for my clients. They've recognized this and they're like kind of bordering that hyper independence. And I'm like, no. It's going to be okay. There's a nice healthy middle, because those to me are both trauma responses.
100%.
I'm like,
there's
get this bridge in the middle.
Yeah, there's how I teach boundaries to people, and I got this from my internship at MAR, which is a rehab center in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a wonderful place. It's a nonprofit, and their family program is the first place that I heard this. So just to give credit where it's due, that boundaries exist across the spectrum. And on one end, it's like you have a house with a yard and no fence. And so you're really connected, but you're not protected. You know your neighbors really well, but you know them because their dog is always shitting in your yard, right? On the other end of the spectrum, you've got a house and a yard and an 8-foot high brick wall. So you are really protected, but not connected. So there's no poop in your yard, but you also don't know any of your neighbors. And either end of this is really hard to exist in. People oftentimes go on a pendulum from one to the other for a while until they can find, to your point, that middle ground, which for me is like a 3-foot high picket fence that I can open so I can decide who's allowed in my yard, and it's only my dog's poop that exists there.
Exactly. And to extend this energetically, that fence is your aura definition.
Oh, love that. Yes.
If you are not coming into the world and actively claiming your space aurically, because electromagnetically we're extending outward. And the first thing that's going to hit us, like, we're not like, it's not actually physical. When we're exchanging with people, it can be telepathic. It's all aura to aura contact. So if we're not creating that fence for ourselves, and I remember at first I was like, I'm creating a freaking minefield. No one's going to touch my aura. That's actually a form of resistance.
Right.
And that actually keeps you stuck. That's still that minefield. I love that, like 8-foot, 10-foot fence with your gate guard and like
sentries.
Yeah. You're like, have a house. I used to explain this to my clients visually. I was like, it's the castle with the moat, with the drawbridge up, and you're in the tower and you're the princess and you're like, oh, why isn't my beloved coming to me? Put the drawbridge down, honey. Like, and that's easier said than done. But it's like your beloved standing there like, yo, what's up? And you're like, save me. And he's like, I mean, it would be nice if you could kind of meet me on the ground.
Help me help you.
Help me. Like, cool. I get it. You want to be saved, but like, isn't that your kind of work to like at least get on the ground? Yeah. Just our work. But so like from the aura standpoint, if we aren't defining our aura and creating neutral separation from the world, or we call it being senior to our space. It doesn't mean that we're having authority or dominance over anyone. It just means that we are here and we're saying, this is my aura. I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm here. Like we make a little declaration, like, this is my space. This is my head. This is my heart. This is my root chakra. This is mine. Any energy that wants to come into this space plays by my rules. And my rules are that I have permission that if something is harming me to push it out. Really naturally. I just gently guide it out. I'm like, yo, I don't like how you're behaving in this space. Get out of here. And because there's a law, I don't even know what the spiritual law is. There's like a law that, I guess the law, to explain it this way, would be, if you're in your body, this is why being in your body is so important. you are senior to every energy around you. It's like the most
Mm.
senior place that you can be is being in a body to the spirit
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So if
That
you're like,
makes sense.
oh, I see people in my room at night, you're senior, you're in the body,
Mm.
which means like we have certain powers being physical in a physical world. You got to say, this is my world. I'm physical. You're not. Haha.
Right.
This helped
Right.
me as a medium because I was like, no, if I say go away, they gotta go. I'm
Amen.
senior. So it's like, yeah, I love that idea too with the boundaries. It's like, okay, my fence is really beautiful. It's white. You can see through it. You can see how gorgeous my house is. Like, I'm beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. The landscape in here is gorgeous. And also, I get to invite you in and escort you out based on what my preferences are.
Right.
Oh, I love boundaries. I really do. I don't love them in process, but I would say that
Right.
that they are so powerful. And I think that there's going to hopefully be a blend too, more so of like the somatic work and the psychic work, because that's like where I'm headed. I'm like, okay, how can we teach people energetically as well that you can have an energetic boundary? And it doesn't have to be, I think it's like so big. It doesn't have to actually be verbal all the time, because that can be really exhausting, especially when people aren't hearing you or you have trauma that way. I think Jaya John, if I'm saying his name wrong, I'm going to go look it up. He says boundaries are not meant to be an electric fence. And I resonate with that spiritually, physically. Like, we're not harming people with our boundaries.
Right.
We're just claiming our space. We're just saying, hey, like this is my energy field. I'm responsible for it, which no one wants to be. No one really wants to be responsible for their bullshit.
Well, you know, the interesting thing, I was actually just talking about this with somebody yesterday, is I think that when you're an empath, you ultimately can feel if someone's heart is good. And I think that what I see over and over again is people making excuses for bad behavior because they're able to see that a person's true essence is inherently good. Well, great, fine, dandy, but when we don't say no, when we don't have good boundaries, not only are we making it harder for their own growth journey, we're like taking away their lessons, but it really says that we, on some level, like don't believe that they're capable of it. You know, there's an inner healing intelligence there of, I believe that your journey is yours and I don't need to fix it or plan it for you. And my boundary is that I will love you either from close or from far away while you're on that journey. I'm not going to take it from you.
100%. Yes. So we call these in the psychic world growth periods. And I work with healers that overextend their energy, which I would explain in psychological terms as codependence.
Right.
They have their value has been created on being in this codependent relationship with maybe their mom or their like they had to do that to survive. They had to heal people in order to survive. They have this amazing gift and they're giving it all away. And then they're like, I'm drained, I'm exhausted, I'm empathic. I can't separate from my feelings. And this is what I teach people energetically how to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now I lost it. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited about this that I lost it. But this idea, come on, spirit, bring it back.
Inner healing intelligence was where you made a big hand motion.
Oh, I love that. We tend to like enmesh our auras and give our healing energy away. What were you talking about before? I was like, you were talking about like people being empathic and seeing the good in people. Oh, growth periods. Growth periods. Of course, I went unconscious. It's a huge topic. So we get a sense of like validation because we're running a program that in order to survive, we have to give our healing energy away. Yeah. But it's actually just enabling someone. If we really truly believe in sovereignty, agency, I have beliefs that, unfortunately, because if you've read the book Existential Kink, it's incredible.
Mm.
It's a
Is
good
that by
one.
Janet Hardy?
Is it? I have no idea. No idea. But
Okay.
it has this concept of like, we come here, you know, because we're kinky, like we're experiencing. Anyway, that's a whole side
Mm.
topic. I will say that I have the belief that before we come to this planet, we make the agreements that we're going to make. We can have the contracts. We blah, blah, blah. And so we're getting this value from healing people. And it is taking them away from processing, and I'll use the term karma really lightly, because there's a lot of different interpretations for karma. For me, I have this amazing, funny image about karma. It's like we're just exchanging with people. My socks are my socks, and when we exchange with someone, we're just kind of getting our socks back. We're like, okay, I'll take my socks. Here are your socks. You can match yours now. Incredible. It's really just like this exchange that's happening. It's just exchange.
Love that.
But we are taking someone from their growth, just to put it in terms that you've just said. And we actually take on karma for doing that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That
And
makes good sense to me.
It's not conscious. We're not doing it consciously,
Yeah.
but we're enabling them, and then we get stuck in their stuckness because we match that energy. And so the idea of doing energy work is like, okay, how do I call my energy back? And then what happens is that we start to look at all of the areas in which you have these agreements with people. And then you can start to move forward because you're like, okay, these things don't need to be in play anymore. I don't need to give my healing energy because their soul has maybe mocked up in this lifetime. I want to learn how to use my healing energy. And you're kind of like blocking me from it. You become this weird block to like their growth.
Yeah.
And you can do that from a distance. And in a loving way. And then you teach someone, like, of course, we do this in a loving way for ourselves, first and foremost, and for that other person, because we don't want to enable someone and keep them from taking, we call it in psychic training, taking their next steps.
I love it.
If you're laying in front of the staircase that they need to go down in order to reclaim whatever their journey is, it's kind of selfish. It's like I get such a sense of identity from healing you. And like, I get this. It's part of my identity. That's like a big part of me being a healer. I don't know how to step away from that because my healing energy is so important to me. It's like, no, we'll just teach you how to use it for yourself. Ooh,
yeah. Are you familiar with the drama triangle by chance?
I just learned about this. I've never been so happy with a triangle in my life.
Yes. So just for those listening, if you've never heard of it, there's 3 sides to a drama triangle, but you can have many people within it. Most people have a favorite place. You know, one place is victim because, hey, there's no personal responsibility there. We love that if you don't want to change. But the rescuer position, you know, that's that primary identity. And I help people, and it feels so nice to be needed. And sometimes when a rescuer doesn't have a victim, they will create one.
Yes.
It's a thing. Well-intentioned, loving people. You know, and so I think that that's so much of like, if you're getting your identity from being a helper, like, look at what systems you might have gotten that from and how you continue to go around the triangle. Are you the persecutor? Are you the bad guy? Are you the victim? Are you the rescuer? And, you know, how is that serving you or not?
Exactly. And I love the idea too about kind of this healer energy, this fixer, and like how they drop into victim when someone doesn't want to be healed.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I love it. Or they go into persecution. Like it's so interesting how these dynamics shift, and I'm so like curious about it, and I'm learning more. It's a new concept for me, and I was like, how did I not know about this? Because I've been all parts deeply. All parts exist in me. And yeah, as somebody who is like a recovering, like, my mom was an alcoholic growing up. So from an early age, my healing energy I was programmed to give my healing energy to her to sustain her, because I believed that she didn't have it for herself. She was a victim. She wasn't taking those steps to claim that for herself, because of a lot of different things, single mom, type 1 diabetic. There's a lot of different reasons, right? And that created this story in me that I have to drain myself in order to receive love.
Yeah. So
And
many
I'm
of us
like,
got that message.
no, absolutely not. A love that feels good for me matches that, matches my energy, has their own healing energy running. I can see it energetically. But I will say I still do attract people who want me to heal them.
Right.
When you turn your light on and you say, I'm open for business as a healer,
Right.
in any modality, as a therapist, this is because we have this natural gift to heal. You attract people who want to be healed. And my mentor, Olivia Ray, who's an incredible, incredible psychic and trance medium and has gone through the program that I'm in, she's always like, a really good question to ask, especially if you're dating or you're in friendship, is this person a client? Or are they meeting me? Like, are we in a good reciprocal, like exchange here? Because there's been so many people that I'm like, oh, like they'll ask me like, oh, do you want to do a session for me? Like dating me. And I'm like, no, do I come to your work and like do a session for, like, what are you talking about? Like, no, I don't want to do a session for you. I will, but like you can book it through my website. There's this natural tendency, at least when I date men, for them to expect or have expectations of me to help them. And I'm like, I don't really want to enable this narrative anymore. I don't really want, I'd rather hurt your feelings temporarily and just like your nervous system. Hearing no is probably gonna spiral. But I also am not responsible for that. This is your growth. Yeah. And I can
I recommend dating women.
Tell me more. Tell me more of everything that is so great about women. Oh my gosh. Yes, I will be coming back to women. There's a little fear because of a certain trauma that had happened in that first process. And also, oh my gosh, I think the process of coming out and claiming that part of me and not being so like laid over with my spiritual awakening and like all of it happening at once, I was like, oh my God. So I think I'm in a much more grounded place to attract a woman who's at my level. And I don't want to say that in a hierarchy sense, because that's fucking gross. Ever. Like I'm at a level because I'm spiritual. Like, no, it's disgusting. We're not doing that. To just meet someone who loves themselves as much as I love myself, who embodies their own healing energy, who is connected, who wants to grow, like who's an adult and has personal agency and responsibility. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we could talk for the rest of my life and I'd probably be happy. And we could just
flew by.
Go back and forth. But I just want to say thank you so much for being here on the podcast, Nicole. How can the listeners find you?
So they can go to my website, www.soulsciencehealing.com. And that's a great way to kind of get to know me. I've recently started doing some TikToks. And so my goal there is just to provide as much education as I can. And that is also at Soul Science Healing. And if you're curious about who I am as a person, my personal Instagram, which I allow my clients to add me to, is at Puppies Not Prozac. Not that there's anything wrong with Prozac. I just prefer puppies as the way to get my serotonin needs met. So Puppies Not Prozac is my Instagram handle. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thanks so much for having me.
You've been listening to High Havingness, the podcast. I'm your host, Alexandria Kenyon. You want to connect with me more? You can visit my website, alexandriakenyon.com, or send me a DM on Instagram, Alexandria